Hey everybody, it's Zippy here. I'm going to give you guys a quick breakdown on turn signals for wiring onto your Dune buggy. Now I've got three kinds of Volkswagen rigs here. One of them's the old school early style. Some of them are 5 wire, some of them are 6 wire, but essentially they're all more or less the same. There's 3 wires at the very end of your rig that probably already be terminated. One of them is going to have 2 stripes on it, a white and a green stripe. One of them is going to have just a white stripe, and one of them has just a green stripe. Well, these are the 3 that work your turns. This one is a signal coming from your flasher. It would be the load wire, I suppose. And the green one, well, the white one's left, the green one's right. If you know anything about boating and channel markers, you know that green, right, go is a common term. So you can always remember that green is the right turn. These 2 wires here are for the solenoid if you were going to trigger it high beams with a button here. Now, one of them just simply goes to ground, and one of them goes to the dimmer switch, which is called the S wire. And that's probably the easiest and simplest one of them to use. You really only need to work up three switches. Aftermarket jobs will have probably 5 because they'll call one front left, rear left, front right, rear right. Yeah, that's a bunch of waste of time. Just pick 3 and go with that. Now, the next kind that came along was a job just like this. It has just a turn signal and an ignition on it, and usually a bunch of wires coming off the bottom. The ignition side's going to probably have 3 wires. The heavy one's power, the next heaviest one's starter, and the other one's ignition. There's no accessories wire here. You'll have to, if you want one, you'll probably pair it with the ignition, I suppose. Or maybe even just go for the number 30, always hot. That's always another option too. And on the turn signal bundle, same thing applies. One of them's got 2 color stripes. One of them's green and white, and then you have a green one and a white one. So same thing goes here with the browns. It's the 2 browns that are smallest. The striped one and the other one that's not striped but the same gauge. Those are the ones that you would use for high beam. And in this case, you pull back on the lever to make the high beam go. And then along came the late 70s Beetles with wipers also on board, and there's a whole crap load of pins in the bottom. It's really fidgety sometimes to get involved with this, especially if you don't have all the connectors for this, because you got to fight them all on individually, and they push in sometimes, and it can be a conundrum, but it can be done. So the ignition bundle goes into that side there and all the other stuff there. Now I've conveniently made a layout of what all that is right here on this diagram. So the fact of the matter is, if you're running wipers, you kind of only need to use these 3 right here, fast, slow. And now from the park, there's a whole other conundrum for getting your wipers to park. But this is a dune buggy. We're trying to dumb things down with less wiring. And then the turns are all this guy right there. And the S and the S minus are basically for the dimmer circuit if you're going to be using the dimmer on this. And 31's the horn in, which grounds through the column. Yada yada yada. I like to use a dash mounted horn button. It's a lot simpler and doesn't require a solenoid. Once you get the small wiring and springs involved, they blow out sometimes if you don't use a solenoid. That's why there's always this a horn solenoid, but that's just something else to break down on your dune buggy. Over here on this side, it's really easy to bust it out. Starters here, main power is always number 30. 15's ignition power, and X would be your accessories. Those are the only ones you really need to worry about. Don't get confused with plugging up too much grounds and other stuff when you don't need it. It's gonna cause issues. So there you have it. That's how you wire up any turn signal. Now, if you have an aftermarket job, you just got to isolate the 3 that you need: power in, and then left turn, right turn. And we'll get into hazards a whole nother time because that's a whole other scenario.